What is up, everyone? Welcome to episode 3. That is right, tres of Sweet Bit Radio. Real quick, just want to thank everyone so much for the support with the YouTube video I posted earlier in the week. It was a reaction video of me just sitting down, watching the first Kiss concert that I attended, and just telling stories about the day, kind of a brief history with my band, and just why that time frame means so much. Some guys on the Facebook pages that I'm a part of had some kind words. I know a few kind comments from fellow YouTubers as well, so I greatly appreciate that. And if you're listening to this and you haven't watched that video, just go watch it real fast. Well, you can't watch it real fast. It's like 2 hours long, but you get the gist of it. And I was just surprised some people actually just watched the whole thing, you know. That was really cool. So I greatly appreciate that. Before we start our topics, let me just remind everyone that this podcast is not, I repeat, is not sponsored by Gene Simmons Moneybag Soda. However, if Gene Simmons Moneybag Soda wants to sponsor this podcast, they can. Just reach out to me. But before we begin, go ahead, grab your Moneybag Soda and take a sip of that sweet, good. But on a serious note, very tragic news over this week in the Kiss world. Obviously, we had the passing of Bob Kulick. Bob was never an official member of Kiss, but was always in the background, in the workings of Kiss, had a huge part in Kiss history. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you know who Bob Kulick is, so I don't have to dive too much into that. It's a very odd year. I remember so many Bob memes were appearing. It seems like maybe this time last year, a little later in the year, due to a lot of his interviews and stuff. And obviously, we don't know many details, but I just hope that Bob and Bruce were able to find peace with one another before this. Obviously, we have no idea what happened and don't want to speculate on anything. But signs point to things not being too well for Bob before his passing. But anyway, on another note of the Kiss world, we had Paul Stanley appear with his Stationed at Home Soul Station cover of Oh Baby Baby. And just what a listen. If you haven't listened to that, go listen to that right now. Stop this podcast, put it on pause, go look up the Soul Station. I think it's under Paul Stanley's YouTube channel, but just listen to it. It's amazing. Paul sounds good. His whole band sounds amazing. They harmonize so well. I believe it released Friday, and since then I've listened to it over a dozen times. Get addicted. So, yeah, what a voice he has. I mean, he has so much talent that it seems like even whenever his rock voice is going, he's just adapting it into this Motown, beautiful falsetto singing style. So it's amazing. Just go check it out. Now we will kind of start our main topic of this week's episode of the podcast, and that is me just listing my favorite songs from the makeup years of Kiss. And I actually haven't done Psycho Circus, Sonic Boom, and Monster, but I'll probably just do those on the fly. I didn't know where they fit because I'm trying to do the best songs, in my opinion, of the makeup years, the worst songs of the makeup years, and then go to the non-makeup. And then I just did not know where to put Sonic Boom, Psycho Circus, and all that. So they will definitely probably be lumped in here. And that'll take some time. So to start off, obviously, we're going with the debut album. And for my pick of my favorite song off of the debut Kiss album, it has to be Nothing to Lose. And it's just, whenever I think of this record, I always think of this song or Strutter. And it seems like definitely over the years, this song has just taken over my spot as my favorite for this record. It used to be Strutter, No Brainer, but I just got to where I love this song so much. It has so much energy. The unplugged version is amazing as well. And a close runner-up, and I feel like if it was done in this style, it would take over the first spot. So just backtrack a little. I've got my favorite from each album, and then I've got a runner-up. So I'll just explain those two. But definitely my runner-up for the 1974 Kiss debut would have to be Let Me Know. Whenever I think of Let Me Know, though, I always think of the quote-unquote live version that's on You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best. I love that version. It just gives a whole new life to the song. So those are my two picks for the 1974 debut album of Kiss. Obviously, next is Hotter Than Hell, and my personal favorite for Hotter Than Hell. This one was kind of hard. I definitely had some issues picking it, but if I looked overall with my Kiss-tory and I singled it to one specific song that I always go back to, it was Going Blind. It was one of the first Kiss tracks that I listened to. Me and my buddy had, well, obviously he had copies of Symphony. He eventually gave me one, and we just used to watch that concert so much. And Going Blind was always one of my favorites in the second act, so it always sticks out in my mind. And then I love the tone of the version that's on, well, the album version. So that is it. And it's just got this haunting melody and this bass line and vocal delivery that just makes it's just so different. I'm trying to describe it just from the three albums alone, but just in the timeline of Kiss. Like Going Blind is just such a unique sounding Kiss track in my opinion. And especially also the unplugged version. I mean, it's brilliant. It's just a brilliant little acoustic song. And obviously, it looks like my runner-up for this album was the title track, Hotter Than Hell. There wasn't no specific reason I chose Hotter Than Hell. I've just always been drawn to that song. I mean, the whole album I love. It's just Hotter Than Hell. Definitely just seems a notch up above all the other ones. A lot of these do suffer from production. I mean, Coming Home doesn't sound nowhere near as good as it does on MTV Unplugged. And if I looked at it through that lens, it probably would be Coming Home. But I just chose Hotter Than Hell for this. Alright, so next up we are going to Dressed to Kill. And I mean, how classic of a Kiss song is Come On and Love Me. The song is short, and to be honest, the whole album's short. We all know that. But the song is just it's super effective for how short it is and just how simple it is. I mean, it's just got the simple pounding chords, and it's just the way that Paul sings the Come On and Love Me. It's just so classic. It's so Paul. You can definitely tell in his early writing style that it was just very hopeful as far as like where the band was going and stuff. So that was my top pick for Dressed to Kill, and it looks like the runner-up for this, and this was it could be somewhat controversial. Take a sip of the money bags real fast. I actually picked Two Timer, and I've always enjoyed this song. I actually heard the You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best version of this song before I heard the studio version. So I was already drawn to it, and then I just love the tone of the guitars on the studio version too, and just Gene's vocals, everything about it. It's just powerful is the best way to describe it. So, skipping Alive, I did not add the Alive or Alive 2, I don't think, on the list, no. And I probably should, just for the studio sides of Alive 2. But anyway, going on, next up in the studio album timeline is Destroyer. And for me, how could it not be Shout It Out Loud? This was one of the earliest Kiss songs that I had heard and instantly fell in love with. Obviously, if you've listened to my podcast or just any of my videos or my Instagram, any of that, you would know that my first exposure to the band was actually the movie Detroit Rock City, and the scene where they are driving down the road blaring Destroyer, or blaring Shout It Out Loud. Definitely always stuck out in my mind, and it just always stuck with me. And then, yeah, I mean, that's basically all I can say. And it was like my favorite Kiss song for the longest time. And it's just one of the best, how do I describe it, just rally songs. Like, this is my anthem type songs. I love it. It's just effective, and I use that word all the time, just the song being effective, but it just gets to the point, and it just is high energy all the way through. Like, there's just not a dull part of this song. And the solo's awesome too. It's super short, but super good. And it looks like my runner-up for Destroyer was King of the Nighttime World. And this again is just the brilliance of Kiss during this time frame. Now, I know that the band kind of bought the song out, but they really did make it their own. I mean, if you hear the original version, Kisses is just so amazing. And it's just from the start of Detroit Rock City to the end of King of the Nighttime World, it's just this big epic, like, two songs, how they just fade into each other and stuff. And I've always enjoyed that. And whenever I got into Kiss as a teenager in high school. So, I mean, there was just a lot of that hopeless romantic style of me. And you'll see that a lot of these songs play on that. But this was just like everything that like a teenager would want to say to their crush almost, I feel like. Just the energy and the delivery and stuff. So, those were my two for Destroyer. Now we are going to Rock and Roll Over. And my pick for Rock and Roll Over was Mr. Speed. It's just that opening riff that just crunches your eardrums. And I just think that it just makes me want to hear more of the song as soon as I hear that opening lick. And I love the demo version that was released on the box set. In some ways, the demo version to me is better than the studio version, and then sometimes the studio version is better than the demo version. Either way, Mr. Speed is a song that you cannot go wrong with. And just a little side bit of minutia. This was actually like one of the first Kiss solos that I learned on guitar. I could never master the intro riff. I could do the verse and I could do the solo, but I could not do that riff. That it seems like a lot of guitarists struggle with it. The ones who I've seen play it. So looking at the list, it looks like my runner-up for Rock and Roll Over has to be Hard Luck Woman. And I know it's poppy, and I know it's kind of calculated, and it's not Kiss, like at its core, but I love it. Like, whenever I try to introduce people to Kiss that like wouldn't like the more traditional style, I always use this song. Like it's part of those like 10 songs that just anybody can listen to, and I feel like enjoy Kiss. This was one that whenever I first got the box set from my good friend, I could listen to the box set at my house. I can't remember what disc. I think it's disc 2 that Hard Luck Woman's on. And I think also New York Groove was on it. And my mom always ruled the stereo at the house. But if I put in the second disc of the box set, I could usually listen to it because it had Hard Luck Woman and New York Groove. And like my mom loved those songs growing up. And those were like the 2 Kiss songs that she liked. So that's how I feel like that's always stuck in the back of my mind as far as like trying to introduce the band to people, using songs like that, like the more poppier side of Kiss. Because I mean, it's brilliant. All Kiss is brilliant unless it's Boomerang or I'm Alive. I don't care for those, but those are not part of this set at all. Alright, so going down the list now, it looks like we are at Love Gun. And for my pick, how could it not be I Stole Your Love? Just what a way to start an album, what a way to start a show, and also what a way to start a movie. Because if you remember, in Detroit Rock City, this is the first Kiss song you will hear. Whenever Jam hides the Kiss record in the Carpenters album sleeve, and she puts it on, and just I Stole Your Love blares. That again was part of the introduction for me for Kiss, and just hearing that riff and just listening to the brief bit of the song, I fell in love with it. So I'm very partial to that. It's just high energy, and it just is a straight go. Like it just doesn't stop. The song doesn't. And it looks like my runner-up for this album goes to Ace's debut lead vocal. And you all know what song that is. It is Shock Me. I love this song. I love the solo. And I also feel like I'm partial to this song because it's in Detroit Rock City as well. Whenever they're at the gas station, the guy in the background is promoting the guy on the radio in the background of the convenience store is just promoting the upcoming Kiss concert, and they just play this, and it just catches my ear too. And I mean, it's a great song, great solo. So Shock Me is my runner-up for Love Gun. Listen. Take another sip of our money-back soda. It is kind of hot here today. It's actually really hot. And I don't have the AC on because I don't want it mixing in with my audio. So I'm just bearing through it. So it looks like up next, we have the solo albums in my timeline because I counted these as studio albums, even though I did not count the studio side of Alive 2 for whatever reason. But, I mean, I could go ahead and do that one. It's going to be Larger Than Life. I love the song. I love just the instruments and everything, the way it sounds, the way it's produced. It really is a larger than life production. It sounds huge. My good friend who I always talk about, he loved that song whenever we were in high school, and he would always play it. And I remember he had this picture that he printed off of Kiss, and it was like at the reunion tour, but like they're looking down at the camera, and the camera's like pointed at an angle, so they really do look larger than life. And I just always remember him calling that, and the picture might be called Larger Than Life too, I have no idea, but I just always remember him calling that picture Larger Than Life. So I always think of that. And then my runner-up, I mean, it would have to be Rocket Ride. That was my favorite for the longest time, from Alive 2. So, yeah, just a total sidetrack. And starting off with the solo albums, I picked Paul's, as many of you know, is my favorite of these solo albums. It has been for the longest time. It was Ace's, and then Paul's just took off and destroyed it whenever I got to hear Paul's full solo album. And obviously, if you know me, you're going to know that I would pick Wouldn't You Like to Know Me as my favorite from this album. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's one of my favorite just Kiss-related songs. It's just one of my favorite songs, period. I listened to it in high school. It's just got this high energy, and it just makes you want to hear the song over and over again, I think. And it's just basically like, it says everything that you would want to say to a girl that you're crushing on. And that was just it in high school, man. Just crushing on girls and then listening to like Kiss and then just wanting to like pull out a guitar and just play the song for them and sing it and just put that energy onto them. I love it. I love this song. I can't even express like how much I love it. It's just brilliant. Paul's writing style from this point on is just brilliant, I think. I just think this time period, he's just so good, from like, I would say Love Gun to Unmasked. I don't think that there's a bad Paul song in the bunch. So my runner-up for this record is It's Alright. And I always picture like It's Alright just being like part 2 of Wouldn't You Like to Know Me. It's like lyrically it's the same, and song idea wise it's kind of the same, but it's just high energy all the way through. And I just love the song. I adore it. It's another one of those that just says everything that you would want to say to a chick. So those are my two for the Paul Stanley solo album. And now we're going to jump down to Peter Criss's solo album. And for me, I really do. I enjoy a lot on this song, or on this album. And so I chose as my favorite Don't You Let Me Down. And that basically goes back to when my best friend gave me the box set during that summer. This was on disc 2 that I always played. Always got to play at our house. I'm pretty sure it was on the same disc. And I just always remember hearing this too. And my mom was like, for some reason it seemed like she was fond of Peter and Ace and not Paul and Gene at all. So she would listen to this a lot too. So I got to where I loved it. I really do think it's a great song. And then my runner-up, I picked Kiss the Girl Goodbye. And during this time, my friend would get iTunes gift cards. And sometimes he would buy a full album, and then sometimes he would just buy like random songs from the solo albums to put on his iPod. And then whenever he would buy them, he would always burn me a CD with the newest songs that he bought. And I just remember this was like pushed in with like a bunch of 80s Kiss. There was like a few solo album songs. I think it was like When You Wish Upon a Star. This was on there. I want to say Move On was a part of it, and then Speeding Back to My Baby. Somehow those just ended up on a CD full of like 80s Kiss Under tracks. So I've always been partial to this song. Next up, hold on. Ooh, it's hotter than hell in here. Next up, I chose Gene Simmons' solo album. No specific order. This one's probably my second favorite of the solo albums. Just because I think the acoustic stuff on Gene's solo album is just brilliant. And you will see that by my pick being, for my favorite, See You Tonight. Whenever I see his album cover, I always think of See You Tonight. I have no idea why. Like, for Paul's, I always hear Wouldn't You Like to Know Me. For Peter's, I always hear Don't You Let Me Down. When I see Gene's, I always think of See You Tonight. Whenever I see Ace's, I always think of What's on Your Mind. So this is just great. Gene being the Beatles, songwriting style. And I mean, it works so good on Unplugged too. I adore the Unplugged version, but we're just looking at the studio versions here. And I mean, it's just as good. I love this song. And then the runner-up for this album is Mr. Make Believe. Again, it falls under the same category. It's just Gene being acoustic, writing Beatles-esque type songs. But I love it. I love when Gene does Beatle type songs. So yeah, those are the two for the Gene solo album. Now we have Ace Frehley's solo album, and for that, obviously I picked, well, obviously not to you because you don't know what I'm picking yet, but it's What's on Your Mind. And a funny little side story, in high school, I was setting up my voicemail for my first phone, and I remember having to use, I want to say I had to use my neighbor's phone for some reason to set up my phone. I'm not exactly sure, but I just remember I had it timed. I did my little spiel of like how this is Patrick, blah 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 blah, and I had What's on Your Mind playing in the background, and then so whenever I get done saying my spiel, like I just put the phone up to the speaker and it's just the chorus to What's on Your Mind. So whenever I think of that, I always think of the day recording that, and then everybody had to listen to like 30 seconds of What's on Your Mind before they could leave me a voicemail. So yeah, again, it falls under the Wouldn't You Like to Know Me style of songwriting. It's just like what you would say to a girl at that time, like hopeless romantic high school me. Like, this is what I would want to say to a girl. Like, this is a song that I would write for a girl. And I'll always get drawn to that style of writing, just like the hopeless romantic style, or just like the quote unquote, I guess, like dead ass with a girl too. So that was my pick for my favorite. And then my second one, and here's another side story with this, is Rip It Out. And Rip It Out was part of one of those CDs that my friend made me of undertracks. And I remember that undertrack one had like rock and roll radio. It had My Way on it. It had and then it had Rip It Out. And it also had I Finally Found My Way to You, and it had a bunch more, but those were like the ones that I always listened to during this time period. And I was dating a girl like real briefly, like 2 or 3 days, and like she broke up with me, and then my friend gave me this CD, and like Rip It Out just started the CD, and like it just like, I don't know, it just captivated me. And it was just the perfect like breakup song for the time. So I just always think of that time period because I was at my grandparents' house at the time, having to live with them for a while, and I had this old CD player, and like sometimes it would play burnt CDs and sometimes it wouldn't. And then this was actually one of the CDs that worked, and I just always remember that. So those are my two for the Ace Frehley solo album. Now we're going to jump into Dynasty. That's how they say it in Australia. Back home it's Dynasty. I always have to say that whenever I hear Dynasty. So my pick for this is Sure Know Something. Again, it's just Paul's songwriting style during this time. It's so poppy, it's so melodic, but it's just, oh, I love it. It's just great words. Started off with like the symphony version of this track, and then got a MP3 player, and this was like one of the few songs that I had at the time on the MP3 player. And actually, to get the symphony version, on the MP3 player. I had to like record it using the voice recorder, so it's just this god awful quality. But I had it on my MP3 player, and that same story happens later on. Well, with the next album, and it was just like this song just hit me at the right time, and for the longest time, it was my favorite Kiss song. Like, I remember whenever I heard it, whenever I got real big into it, I was a freshman in high school, and I had this crush on this girl in the English class, and it was just like, I don't know, whenever I saw her, the song always played in my head. So, again, Hopeless Romantic. And then the runner-up for this album, thinking about it, and I know, probably unpopular opinion, I know it's overplayed, but I Was Made for Loving You, and I've just, like, always liked the song, but until recently, like, I've actually just, like, listened to the song and not just thought of it as, like, oh, that's I Was Made for Loving You, and writing it off. Like, lyrically, I love it. Like, I just love how it starts off with the Tonight, I Want to Give It All to You. I mean, that's just, like, that just grabs you by the balls almost and lets you know, lets the lady know what you're thinking about. So those are my two for the Dynasty record. And now we're going to jump to Unmasked. And side note, this was my favorite Kiss album for the longest time. I'm not sure where it ranks now. We're not trying to rank anything album-wise right now. So obviously, I mean, if you again follow any of my social media stuff, you will know that Shandy is my favorite Kiss song. And I know that is unpopular opinion. Shandy is the butt end of so many jokes, like in the Kiss camp, but I just love Shandy. And fun fact, whenever we would watch Symphony, my best friend would always skip over this song. Like, we never listened to it together. He just always said that it was an awful song, and he would skip it. And I just never listened to it because we watched Symphony so much together, but by the time he gave me my copy, I didn't just sit and watch it. Like, I would just listen to certain songs, and I never listened to Shandy because, I mean, he had taught me everything I knew about Kiss at the time, and I was just like, okay, it's an awful song. And then whenever Kissology came out, the day, obviously we were still in high school, and then he got Kissology 2 after school, and then he drove to Walmart to get it, and then I rode the bus home, and then, like, by the time I got home and settled in, he'd come back, and he invited me over, and we watched it, and, like, I think Shandy is the start of Kissology 2. I know it's the start of one of the discs. I don't know if it entirely starts off. I think, like, Attack of the Phantoms is the first disc. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. But I just remember, like, we watched Kissology, and then, like, Shandy played, and he watched the music video because he had never watched it, and I just, like, loved it. Like, I fell in love with that song. And he couldn't believe it because he, like, watched it and didn't say anything. And I just told him that it was such a good song. And, like, it was just crazy. I went, like, 2 years without, probably a year without listening to it. And then just hearing it and falling in love. So, that was kind of my history with Shandy. And obviously, like, again, talking about the MP3 player that I had, that was actually another one of the songs off Symphony that I had to, like, hold up the voice recorder to the speakers of the TV to get a Symphony version of Shandy because I loved the Symphony version as well. And also had, like, the Unmasked tour that was on Kissology. I had that version on my MP3 as well, where I had to hold them up and record them. So I just remember sitting there that day trying to get those songs on that MP3 player by recording them from the TV, and then, like, somebody would come in and interrupt, and then you'd have to go back and re-record it and stuff. And I think the runner-up for this album, it was very hard for me to choose because I think the first part of this album is just amazing, sugar, pop rock. And then there's a few ones later on in the album that I just love too. But I chose Is That You? And this one has another fun side story with it. I mean, every Kiss song has like fun side stories for me, but I just focused on Unmasked as far as notes wise, just for whatever reason. I actually had to stay after school one day for after school. It wasn't detention, but it was just like this after school thing for like making up time and stuff. And I remember a girl that I had a crush on in middle school was there. And she was sitting up front, and for some reason I had my best friend's, he let me borrow it. He met with me before the end of school and let me borrow his CD player and his burnt copy of Unmasked. And because he bought it on iTunes, he hadn't bought the physical copy yet, so he had burned a copy. And I just remember like listening to that song over and over, and like her talking with the teacher, and it like in my head in high school, it kind of like just played out like it was this rainy day. She was there, and then she would go up and talk to the teacher, and then they went into the teacher's room away from like the rest of us. And I just like thought in my head at the time that this was like the song was basically playing out in front of me. You know, just weird high school stuff like that, like weird thinking. So that is it for Unmasked. Now we're going to jump to The Elder. I'm going to take another sip of Moneybag Soda. And I'll be honest with The Elder, it took me a very long time to get into the album. But obviously my favorite, well, it's not obvious. I don't know why I keep saying that, because you have no idea what it's going to be. But my pick is The Oath. And it's just because of the box set. Like, I just always remember listening to this song. I always really liked like the pre-chorus, and I hadn't associated it with The Elder or the concept of The Elder. It was just a song on its own. So, and as a song on its own, it's rocking and just balls to the walls. I think it gets tarnished just with the idea and the concept of The Elder and where the song takes place in the story. But I love the song, and since then I love The Elder too. And then my runner-up is A World Without Heroes. This was actually one of my favorite Kiss songs for the longest time. Like the first summer that I got into them, like I loved this song. Since then I don't pay much attention to it. I do love the guitar solo in it. Paul plays. It's not crazy or anything. It's just got so much emotion in it for me that I just really enjoy hearing it. So, and I have here a note on a side note. My best friend's mother's boyfriend, I think I'm saying that right, basically the guy she was dating, my best friend's mom, knew that we were Kiss fans, and then he was a Kiss fan growing up early on, and he always talked to us about the, I guess, music video, promo video, whatever you want to call it, of this song where Gene cries, and now it's a gif, and it's like a butt end of the joke in the Kiss community. But I just remember me and my friend being like fascinated hearing the story of Gene like crying during this video, and just that image. Always, me and my friend used to talk about it all the time, and we didn't have like really good access. I mean, this was like also early days of YouTube before everything was just uploaded up there. We could not find this video, and we just always wanted to see it. And I'm now since seen it, and it's not as magical as a high school me thought at the time, but it's a good song. It really is. I really enjoy it. So next up we have Creatures of the Night, and I picked the title track, Creatures of the Night, just because I love it. Like it's got the perfect tone for me, the perfect amount of heaviness. The drums are just like the hammer of Thor just beating on the ground. They sound so huge, and the little bridge part with the guitars I adore. Like I just love this song. I love this whole record, but it was real hard for me to choose. But I looked at like the impact it's had through all of my years in Kiss Street, and this one I just always loved. And then the runner-up for this, I chose I Still Love You, and I just love the suspense and build of the song, and then just by the end, Paul is just belting out this, and it just shows you how great of a singer Paul Stanley is. This song is a huge highlight, and I mean, that's all I can really say as far as that. It's an amazing song, and the unplugged performance is just almost brilliant to me. I think it's amazing. So I've got Psycho Circus, the track list pulled up. I don't have any notes for this. These last three, I'm going to go ahead and do them since it's the makeup era. Well, it's the new makeup era, we'll call it. So looking at it, I think my pick, I'm going to go with, I think, Psycho Circus. Just the song. It was one of those, like, whenever I first started listening to Kiss, I always listened to it. I was always obsessed with it. Always really enjoyed it. And, like, now looking at it, I think it's great in the show. It really is just Detroit Rock City Part 2 almost, but I love it. I love the slow breakdown part with Paul singing. I think he just sounds amazing. The delay, everything. And so Psycho Circus 2 was also just like a magical point too, because that was like the era that my friend was obsessed with. It seemed like whenever we first started listening to Kiss together in high school, I just remember he always played this album, and I always loved this album. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I guess we didn't. We were alive at the time, but we weren't like obsessed with Kiss to where we could get disappointed with the album. We just look at it as a Kiss album, and just like without that bias. I think there's some amazing songs on here. Psycho Circus being one of those. And it looks like my runner-up, if I had to pick one, would be probably Raise Your Glasses. This was my friend's favorite Kiss song. I don't know if it was his favorite. It was his favorite off this album. And we just always listen to it. And it's just one of those anthems, man. There's a lot of anthems on this album. Like you have Psycho Circus and you have A Pledge of Allegiance. You kind of have You Wanted the Best. I don't think it's the best at all. And you have this one too, and I just always really like listening to this track. I don't have any specific memories that I can dive into. So now we will go to Sonic Boom. As you all know, this was my first Kiss album that I listened to on release. I love this album. I love everything about this album. And my pick for this album now as my favorite would have to be Say Yeah. And I'll just go ahead and talk about my runner-up too. My runner-up is Stand. Stand was my favorite off of this album for the longest time. And then we just, The End of the Road, man. Hearing Say Yeah live, I've just loved it. And I've since then listened to this album so much, and I just love the breakdown of Say Yeah, where it just hits the acoustic chords, and Paul's just like, well, let me hear you say it. Like, I just love that. It just pulls you in and just doesn't let go. And Stan is like that too. It's definitely an anthem. It was definitely like my time frame, or my thinking at the time. Just with girls and stuff, I mean, being girl crazy like everyone is in high school, and just stands, always stuck in my head for some reason. Like, it was the song from this album that I wanted to sing to a chick and try to woo them. And I talked a lot about Sonic Boom in my video where I watched my first Kiss concert and react to it. So if you want to hear me talk about Sonic Boom more, obviously go watch that video. Go watch it anyway. But I mean, you can learn a little bit more about my, I guess, fondness of Sonic Boom from that. So next we have Monster. This was an album that, like, I listened to it on release day, and the only thing that I had, and I actually listened to it on Spotify, and for the longest time the only thing that I had saved was Long Way Down. But now that I've, like, since then, I mean, I've become even more obsessed with the band, and listening to this album way more. And now my favorite on here would have to be Take Me Down Below. I love the trade-off of vocals of Gene and Paul. I love the silliness of the lyrics. I love the chorus. I love everything about it. I mean, it's just perfect Kiss. Just songwriting wise and lyrics and just themes overall. I mean, it's not supposed to be taken serious, and it just grabs you, I think. And then my runner-up would have to be All for the Love of Rock and Roll Again. I just love this track. I love the line, that's when you know it's a ring on her finger. That's when she tells you she's single tonight. I mean, it's just brilliant Paul writing skills. So those are my two for Monster. Not any special stories associated with those either. Just kind of over the years have loved them. Me and my friends did listen to the album together probably a year after it released, and those two definitely grew on me from those listening periods. But that was it. So it looks like we're at the end of me ranking, or just telling you there's no ranking, my favorite songs from the Makeup era and then New Makeup era. So next week on the podcast, we will be talking about my least favorite tracks from the Makeup and New Makeup era. And so for your homework, that's what we're going to start doing. We're going to start trying to get people more involved. For your homework, comment down below, what are your favorite songs from the Makeup and New Makeup era? Just one or two off each album. If you don't care, if you want to take time to do that. And just be prepared for next week's where we do the least favorite. And it will probably get more controversial. But that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. I think I've rambled on long enough. Covered all the topics that we need to talk about. It looks like this is going to be my longest episode too. So I guess, as always, that's it for this sweet bit.